Set up and started. Got it. While we're getting set up and started, I just wanted to give a couple of things of overview. One, Alex and I, Alejandro, my partner, is based in Colombia. We are starting Cura as a platform to help high achieving, high potential people network and get access and resources to socially conscious leaders and to information and resources. We both had a hard time with that in our early careers getting started. And so as we kind of progress into our careers, we want to help solve for that problem a little bit. And we try to make sure that we curate really trusted resources, especially the speakers that we bring in here. One thing that we always ask of them is that they're okay and open to opening up their networks and their ideas and their resources to share. So we try to really make sure that everybody has an understanding of our intentions and our values, that we want to make things more accessible for everybody else. And with that, I'll introduce our speaker for today, which is super exciting for me to introduce. And I know he's already got some fans in the audience today, but Mario is the CEO and founder of Think Now Research. We met at the Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Program, 2016 time period. And he is an awesome, high achieving go-getter that entered an unknown field for him at an early age, navigated it, and is really crushing it and doing well. So we're really happy to have him here, talk not only about the highlights of his career, but really tell us a little bit more about who he is, his values, and what is market research. Is there money to be made in it? And how does one go about learning more about it? So I'll let you start, Mario, ask you to just tell us a little bit about your story beyond just the resume, a little bit about who you are, types of things you like, and how you got into market research.
Yeah, I love that intro. Thank you. So yeah, I mean, a little bit about myself, Mario Carrasco. As Jen mentioned, I co-founder of Think Now, but I guess like a little bit about my background. I guess I'm one and a half generation Mexican. My dad was born in Mexico, migrated here when he was 19. My mom was born in Los Angeles. They actually met when my mom was back on vacation. So kind of I have an interesting perspective having one immigrant parent and one Chicana parent, but lucky in that perspective to, my mom went to college. So really pushed education on me as an early age. I was born in Los Angeles, but kind of early on moved to Los Angeles, California. Early on moved to a county right outside of LA, which I think really shaped my view of the world. A town called Simi Valley, probably haven't heard about it. We are infamous for being the town and the Rodney King incident in the 90s. The jury moved from Los Angeles to Simi Valley. So that probably tells you kind of a little bit about that. But needless to say, I was like one of about 5 Latino families in my neighborhood. And I say that because I think that viewpoint really shaped kind of my career moving forward in market research and data, and that I was hyper aware of my heritage and also kind of how I was different and similar to people that I grew up with, which became really critical in my career as an entrepreneur and as a market researcher, moving forward. Kind of an untraditional path to where I came, where I coming to found Think Now. I became really passionate about English literature. I think Jen and I share that. And so early on in high school, got really into stories and stories and writing. I'm really, I think, a naturally curious person. And to me, like, literature and stories was the best way to figure out, why are we here? Answering the big questions. Why do people do what they do? And so went on that journey from an educational perspective. I was lucky enough to be able to go to college, study literature, got an undergrad degree at Cal State School, Cal State Northridge in literature, and really had no idea what I was going to do with that degree once I graduated. And so I found a program that allowed you to go to graduate school and get a master's in literature, while also allowing you to teach full time. And so you could teach literature and get your graduate degree. Given that I had no idea what I was going to do, I opted to do that. And so it was reflecting on it, it was a really good experience, and that I knew right away I wasn't going to be a teacher. I just was not built for it. I think part of it, I was like, 21, 22, or, teaching seniors in high school, 17 or 18. So that, like, I think that was a difficult thing for me, but also I just didn't know what I was getting myself thrown into from a teaching perspective. And I have a lot of respect for teachers now, but once I finished that, I literally ended up graduating with a master's in literature. Then after 2 years teaching, kind of like, what do I do? So I Googled, what do you do with an English degree? And that's, and I'm sure many of you have done that, right? Like, what do I do, period? What do I do with X degree? And I literally Googled that. The two top things that popped up were law and marketing. I knew law didn't really kind of fit my interests. Marketing was super interesting to me the more I kind of dove into it. And so I had found a publication called Hispanic Business Magazine. And Hispanic Business Magazine is not around anymore, unfortunately. But really kind of think about it as like Forbes highlighting Hispanic-owned businesses. And one thing I was really good at, having an English literature background, was doing research. So I researched the founder, found out that turns out Jesus Chavarria, he was one of the first tenured English literature professors at UCSB, or one of the first Latino tenured English professors at UCSB. So we shared that. And so I cold reached out to him, put together a resume, let him know, I don't have any marketing experience, but I'm Latino, that I'm really impressed by what Hispanic business has done, pulled on the heartstrings about the commonality that we shared in terms of studying literature, and he gave me a chance. And so that really, that Jesus giving me that chance really changed the trajectory of my whole career in life. And that's how I got into marketing and eventually market research. So yeah, I don't know if I went too far back, Jen, but
no, that's awesome. I was just saying that, I'm laughing because I also got my master's in literature. I also worked at Hispanic Business Magazine. It's like there was like one path for English majors to go that like also spoke Spanish.
yeah.
So I think like, wow, what a great time that there's way more options for people now. But that's really fun when you just tell the story like that. And I was going to ask you two things on that. Is one, you talk about how one person, right? That's our hypothesis with Cura, right? It's not, we don't need networks of 2 million people, right? Like there's like 1 to 5 people that have really changed the trajectory of my career. There's different people that have brought different things and shifts. How many mentors have you had, and have you had mentors?
Yeah, I for sure. I mean, I would say Jesus is one, and I think I think in life we have different types of mentors. There's professional and personal mentors.
Mm-hmm.
So I think from a professional perspective, Jesus Chavarria was definitely one of the first ones. Although even further back, like I was an okay student, but I think one of the reasons that I pursued literature as well was really like English teachers along the way that really encouraged me to pursue that. So I would consider them as well mentors. the person that gave me my first market research job, who is as actually now my business partner, I consider him a mentor. He hired me, gave me a chance at Garcia Research early on. So I would say I've had, professionally, like 3 or 4 mentors that have had a big impact on me.
How did you get your first client with Think Now? How did you go from being an expert in research to actually making it into a business?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'll tell you a little bit about what happened after Hispanic business. So at Hispanic business, I really thrived. I mean, it was a difficult environment, but I thrived in that. I realized that I had a passion for marketing and the storytelling aspect of it, and then ultimately found that I had a passion for the data aspect of it. The nice thing about Hispanic business, because it was a publication, a magazine that relied on advertisers, I was able to meet, and I was in a marketing function, I was able to meet a lot of different companies that exposed me to so many different business models and potential careers, right? And so that led me to, after Hispanic business, unfortunately, didn't make the transition from print magazine to online. And so at that time, I had left and went to Microsoft, MSN Latino, and I was doing kind of digital advertising there, building microsites, or leading teams that built microsites from a marketing perspective. And that was really because I had, the stamp of having Hispanic marketing expertise from Hispanic business. And that got me really heavy into the data side of things. And then eventually the MSN Latino job was great, but I had a really terrible commute. And so I needed to find something kind of closer to home. And that's when I found Garcia Research, and they were hiring for somebody to build an online panel. And what that is like, I'm sure you've been online and seen, take this survey for cash. Like ads when you want to look at a certain article. That's a whole business called Sample. And so when I was hired at Garcia Research, one of the things I did, because I didn't have any market research background, I researched the company and I put together like a 30-day plan on how I would execute that. And actually, talking about this out loud, I realized that I think my English and writing background helped a lot, and that I would always do my research and go beyond, putting together a resume, and really kind of dig into the business, the people, and present myself as the best option possible. And so, yeah, the person that hired me there is Roy Eduardo, who's now my business partner. Gave me a chance there as well. And so within that company had been around for about 15 years prior to me joining. And once I joined, we built this panel, which, it's a group of people that agreed to take surveys on a regular basis. And it was specifically focused on Latinos in the US. And it became one of the first panels of like that of its kind.
Mario, walk us through that a little bit. So what do? Do you like pick up the phone and call them? Do you send an email to say, do you want to be part of this? And what do they have to say, and what do they have to do in return?
Yeah, so honestly, it's a digital advertising. And like it wasn't anything kind of secret sauce. The thing that we did is we built it organically in Spanish. So I guess that's a detail that I left out. Like, it wasn't necessarily the first Latino US panel. It was the first Latino US panel that had a significant amount of Spanish speaking respondents, survey takers. And so we built the site organically in Spanish instead of translating it in English. We made sure that all the communications were in Spanish and culturally relevant. And then we invested in digital advertising, Google AdWords, Facebook. At the time, that was really the two only options. There wasn't Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, um, and got people to register. And you brought up phone. One of the innovations, I guess, that we had is that once somebody registered for the panel, we would have a call center call them within 24 hours and say, hey, Jen, thanks for registering for our panel. Do you have any questions? And that was because we know that Latinos have higher privacy concerns than other groups, right? And so we wanted to reassure them that that it's all good.
Wow, I love that. And as I think about like marketing in general, right, the industry, one of the things that I connect to personally, one of the things that I like it is I think that they're good marketers. There's a lot of empathy, right?
Yeah.
Like good marketers are really thoughtful about how people are feeling and how do you make the experience better and more seamless for them. That's really interesting I've not heard of other firms that do that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think one thing that like why representation is so important, regardless of the industry, is like one thing that I had in mind, and one thing I still have in mind as a market researcher is like, how do I get my mom to fill out this survey, or my grandma, right? Like, and that makes you think not only about the way that you phrase or word things, but also like access, right? Do they know how to use Zoom? Like, I don't like, that's something that we all just use intuitively, but that's not the case for everybody. So yeah, that's a great point in terms of empathy. That's so important in our field.
And right now the industry is changing, right? It's changing, and I like marketing because it's really reflective of what's going on in a broader conversation, right? The geopolitical climate and just the culture in general of the US. I love the idea of how much talent and art and is influencing just the broader mainstream now, right? Which is really, it's almost, I think it's safe to say now that diverse audiences, diverse segments are the mainstream, and what opportunities are there, and why is marketing looking now to tap into more diverse employees?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a little skewed because I've focused almost my entire business marketing career on diverse audiences, and so like we've known that America is changing from a demographic perspective for a long time. I think it's fundamentally different now for a couple of reasons. One, we know Gen Z is going to be the first majority diverse generation in history, right? Meaning the first time that non-Hispanic whites are not the majority. So that's a shift that's already happening. And two, I think what happened in 2020 with the murder of George Floyd really woke up not only people, obviously, but companies and brands to the importance of diversity and inclusion, in a way that, my 15 years being in the industry has like never really happened before.
That's good insight from that lens. I think a couple things. One, I agree with you, right? I think that diverse audiences, right, Asian, Latino, Black, gay audiences have been influencing the mainstream for a long time, right?
Yeah.
I love fun stats like salsa has outsold ketchup for several years, I love
over a decade.
Yeah, like that's wild, and it's so funny, right? It's like one of those little things where you're like, oh yeah, I didn't think about where it came from. Or the influence that rap music has had on our music culture in general, right? It's really time that marketers finally started paying attention. I think there's also this intersect of it's really difficult to separate your personal values from your professional space. Like I think we grew up, especially in our early careers, where you had to be very separate In fact, I've written pieces on behalf of corporations that say we cannot comment on this, we cannot comment. And I love that today's audiences are saying, well, we want to know what your values are, right? We're not just buying from you because of your product. We could buy 10,000 different types of pairs of shoes. Like, what do you stand for? And so I think that corporate America is really responding to this and like challenging themselves to step up and have their own voice. And they're scared, right? They're scared to make missteps. They're scared not to do the right thing. And I think the ones that are doing well are being really authentic to themselves and their long-standing brand of what they mean and what they stand for. Are there any brands you think are doing particularly well from your perspective?
Yeah, and it's a brand that comes up often because I have a podcast that highlights marketers working in the space I work, like diverse audience, multicultural audience, and I asked that same question, like, are there any brands? And one brand that comes up again and again is Target.
Mm.
And so like Target is a great case in that a lot of companies and brands do some of the work, right? I think the bare minimum, and we saw a lot of that in 2020, was putting out a statement, right? And not really doing anything else. But Target has really taken a holistic approach. And I know the people there in the insights department, so I can attest to that. Like, number one, prior to them launching any kind of marketing campaigns in their stores to reach diverse audiences, they make sure that their team is reflective of the people shopping at their stores. And this is not only from corporate, right? It's like their corporate offices and the people working in executive level positions being diverse, but also that the stores are inclusive and the people working at the stores feel included, because they realize that the people working at the stores are the same people that are shopping at the stores. And if they can't make the people working at their stores happy, like, how are they going to serve their customers? And then, once they got that right, that's when they started to invest in marketing and reaching diverse audiences. And it wasn't just about ad campaigns or having diverse people in their photos. If you go to their stores, they're highlighting vendors of color, right? They have Black-owned products, they have Latinx-owned products, and they highlight it in their stores. And it's not just for Black History Month, and it's not just for Hispanic Heritage Month. It's all year round. So I think, yeah, Target is just a great example of them, of like doing what makes sense. And the great thing about it is that not only does it make sense from where the country's at from a demographic perspective, but it makes sense from a business perspective, right?
Totally.
Everybody loves Target. Like that brand doesn't miss. And it's like, a huge part of that is because of their inclusivity.
Yeah, no, you're right. When I'm stressed, I'm like, should I go to the gym or should I go to Target? what do I do here? I just want to pause and give everyone a chance to ask questions, either through the chat or just shout them out right now. I love hearing from all of you all on either your thoughts on what brands do you think are doing well that you guys really like and respect and connect to, or what questions do you have for Mario? He's navigated a lot of different waters in his career. Any questions that come up?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Mario, for your insight and your input. I'm definitely taking it all in. I'm currently in the process of, I'm a mental health therapist by trade, but I am looking to pivot into marketing as well, particularly product management, product development, still in the mental health field. A lot of things are happening with telehealth and mental health. A lot of things are coming together in that respect. But it's something that I continue to hit a wall with is the fact that all of my expertise is clinical, not necessarily digital and or in product management. So to hear you, really pivot into the field, I'm very curious to learn, how did you go about the the resume building process and really honing in on those transferable skills. And because that's where I'm kind of stuck at this time.
Yeah, that's amazing. I have a special, I think very highly of like mental health professionals. My wife is a mental health professional as well. She's actually pivoting from being a therapist to getting into like operations and management. So I'm witnessing it firsthand in terms of that. I think it's difficult for you all to make that transition because mental health therapists are such in demand that they don't want you to leave seeing clients. That being said, there's so many transferable skills that mental health professionals have, like Jen alluded to, empathy. And you wanted to get into product development. A couple of things I can say about that industry specifically. There is tons of money being poured into mental health startups right now, right? So there's Lyra, there's Brightside, there's Talkspace. So product development, I would say there's tons of free certifications that the large tech companies give, like Google, where you could, get some certification there. And I think the combination of your mental health background with some certification will make your resume look really good. And there's so many roles available for product development in the mental health space. I don't know if you're looking to get out of it completely, but I would recommend kind of looking at tech-based mental health startups that you can transfer many of those skills, because there's a bunch of product developers building products for the mental health field that have no background in that. So I would see your background as a strength.
Oh, Autumn, I'm so excited with this question. We're doing a lot of work for mental health consumer education campaigns on the marketing work that we do. There is a client that we have, Crisis Text Line. Have you heard of them? Oh, no. Man, they are impressive. They are a nonprofit, but they really sit at the intersection of social impact and technology. So they are built with really, really strong technology. They've got a great product development team, a new chief technology officer. I'd encourage you just to even look on their site. They're very flexible because having experience, the nonprofit is a little bit more forgiving on transferring skills and getting just some tech experience from them and saying, hey, I'm bringing all this expertise already. They're very clinical, and a lot of mental health practitioners that have transitioned over there have done that exact transition. They're based in New York. We can work remote, and they're actually hiring right now. If you want to know more, I'm happy to get on a call with you and talk to you a little bit about them, or make some introductions. And I hope that, but all of us that are on the call, if there's any particular, what I recommend to everybody, if you want to go through my LinkedIn or connect with Mario on his LinkedIn, if there's anyone in particular that you want to meet, to reach out to us and let us know so we can help you with those introductions.
That would be awesome. I was so I'm already appreciative of of that gesture for sure. You said it's called
Crisis Text Line.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of them. Yes. Ruth and Howard also sent me their information. I'm like, whoa, this is awesome.
Yeah. So actually, Cura is sponsoring a keyword for all of the alumni for all of the schools. The keyword is Cura. So anybody on this call, anybody that's affiliate, your family, can text Cura at 741-741. They're available in English and in Spanish. And you can get emotional support immediately. It's free. It's private, it's secure, it's available 24/7. So if you don't have someone that you want to talk to, I love it. I mean, I use it all the time. Like, they're like a really trained friend. Sometimes my friends don't give the responses, right? They're just like, oh, just buy it, right? Oh, who cares? Where I really need someone like Crisis Text Line that's like, you know what, this is what you're feeling, and I understand this is what you're feeling, and helps you kind of just go from like a hot moment to a cool moment. But everyone on the call, we're sponsoring it so that everybody can have access for the entire time.
Awesome. Yes, I will definitely, connect with you and find you on LinkedIn. I'm on there every day looking at different
That's
things.
great. That's cool. That's exactly what we're looking for to help. We want to help you with some of those. You have all the experience, right? We just want to help provide some of those tips and open some doors.
That's an excellent resource. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
and reach out to me as well. And I'm happy to connect you with my wife because she's much more in that space than I am. And yeah, I'm sure I think it'd be a good person to talk to.
I
That's awesome.
agree.
Thank you, Mario.
We're definitely aligned for sure.
Lupe, did you have a question?
It was just more out of, I think, I'm not sure, and I could be wrong, but I don't know if anyone here understands what market research is. So Mario, if you could speak to that. But
Yeah.
I did have a question, a follow-up question. I was taking a look at your link, and outside of Think Now, I was also reading that Think Now also owns and operates one of the largest and most representative Hispanic online panels in the industry, Diga y Gane. So I was just curious to better understand what Diga y Gane is. So if you could speak to that, that would be great too, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, thank you for that question about market research. I didn't do a good job of explaining what it is. So essentially, market research is the gathering of opinions. I think the example that probably everyone is aware of is like political polling, right? How well a particular candidate is doing for the presidency or governor or mayor, right? And those polls are an example of market research specific to the political space. What market research is really is marketing research. It's an industry dedicated to getting people's opinions on products and services. So you all probably at some point have taken a market research survey, whether that's like after, I don't know, after you purchase a concert ticket, like how was your experience? Or after you call a bank, how was your experience? That's essentially what market research is like surveys. There's also like focus groups. Maybe some of you have been part of them. Maybe you've seen them on TV. It's where they, get a group of people in a room. There's that glass, right? People are watching them and there's a moderator. Maybe they show them a commercial or they give them a product and they have a conversation about how they feel about it. So yeah, at its core, it's gathering opinions. And what Think Now does specifically is we research diverse audiences because we know that our cultural backgrounds affect how we consume things, right? I mean, it affects every aspect of our life, right? And so I'll give you one of my favorite examples of market research. One of our clients is Honda. Honda's a great brand in general. They do really well among Latino audiences in the US because they're similar to Target. They've done a lot of work in the community to gain that. And then they realized that they needed to put out a new truck, right? The Honda Ridgeline. We helped them do the research to understand why that truck didn't do well among Latino audiences. And so one of the things that we found out is that, Latinos in the US over-index in purchasing trucks. And so they want to understand what is that? Why? And so we did some focus groups online. Actually, it was very similar to this. And we recruited people. And we also recruited just non-Latinos, just general population. And one of the things that we discovered in our research is that for non-Latinos, a pain point of having a truck was that phone call on the weekend, like, "Hey, Lupe, what are you doing? Can you help me move?"
Oh,
right?
wow.
Right. So that was a pain point for many non-Latinos. However, we found among Latinos in general, that was one of the reasons they purchased trucks. They wanted to be that person that people call to help in events like that, right? And so they took that insight and made a whole campaign and around being that person in the family group that was a go-to to purchase truck, to move things or whatever it may be. They did like 3 different scenarios, and I think we increased awareness and purchase like by over 10% for the Honda Ridgeline. So that's really what marketing research is in a nutshell. Your second question, you know, what is Diga y Gane? If you go to digaygane.com, it's translated to say and win. That's our panel where we recruit people to take surveys, just like that Honda survey that I mentioned, right? And so you can register today and take surveys. We roughly pay, you know, $1 to $5 per survey. And yeah, that's how we conduct our research, is through those respondents.
That's awesome. $1 to $5 per survey.
That's super cool that your client's Honda.
And Lupe works a lot in corporate partnerships. He's working with Handshake right now. But can you talk a little bit about the roles that you have in like corporate development and what like your business development team does with the clients on the market research side?
Sorry, is that a question for me or for Lupe?
Yeah, sorry, Mario. That was pretty good.
Can you repeat that?
I was like, oh, it must be frozen. No, I'm just kidding.
My face is frozen, yeah.
So Lupe does a lot of work on, is it corporate partnerships, Lupe?
Yeah, essentially, I basically do sales for companies for the Handshake platform. So you could call it partnerships.
How like what are the roles for sales, for example, within market research?
Yeah, so one, I want to say, like, anybody looking to get into a new industry or a job change, like definitely look into the market research industry. Every single type of role that's available at any type of company is available in market research, from sales to product development to project management. You know, the market research industry, because almost everybody, and we did a study about this actually. So I'm part of also an organization called Insights in Color that is trying to get more diversity into our field. We found that like 80% of people that got into market research got into it by accident. And we found out that it isn't until like year 3 of, on average, of people's careers that they get into market research. And so that's a problem for our industry, right? Because we need more young people, we need more diversity. So definitely look into it. In terms of the types of sales roles, Lupe, like there's lots of sales roles. And you mentioned the Diga y Gane panel. That's even another sub industry within market research called sample. And so there's lots of sales partnerships, etc. Reach out to me. I'm happy to connect with you if you're interested in learning more about that.
That's awesome. Thanks, Mario. I was thinking too, Genesis, not to put you on the spot too, but we had talked a little bit about transitioning from education and from teaching. And I think this conversation is relevant as well, right? A lot of the research and planning is relevant. I think across all of the different industries. It's just kind of like you don't know what you don't know, right? Like you don't know what these opportunities have existed and stuff before. Any other?
I mean, I've connected people to jobs like ranging from someone that was like in retail, that's now been in market research for like 8 years to, so like, don't think that you're not qualified or the skills are not transferable. Like the one nice thing about our industry, because we are so niche, like people are super supportive of people that want to get into it. So I would definitely encourage you all to research it.
That's awesome. Any other questions right now or comments?
Yeah, I had a quick question about what are some of the characteristics or skills that you notice are needed or are practiced in your field as a market researcher? Oh, and by the way, my name's Hector Martinez. Sorry for not introducing myself.
Yeah, I think number one is curiosity. I mean, because market research literally is about getting people's opinions on products and services. So like, I mean, and it's ranging from everything, right? So like we work with Snapchat and Facebook, Google, Honda, AARP, all types of industries, and just, you know, being curious, I would say, is number one. You have to be interested in why people do what they do. Why do people buy what they buy? Why do people watch the shows that they watch or listen to the music that they listen to? I would say that's the number one characteristic that defines people that are in market research. Because if you're not curious about what people do, like finding out what they do about it all day isn't that interesting. But if you are curious, it's super fascinating. And you know, like for me, you know, being on, I think now, like I get to look at studies like that Honda study that I mentioned to you. You know, what else are we working on? We're working on like health, right? Like we're working with a really cool startup right now based out of Texas that's looking to understand how Latinos in Texas purchase healthcare, and do they purchase it online, and why do they go to urgent care and not their primary physician, right? Like that's interesting to me. So I think, yeah, curiosity.
That's very cool. Is that with Eric's team? With Eric's
It
company?
is. It
Cool.
is.
That's good.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Comments, curiosities? I had a question.
Mario.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Hi, Mario. My name is Monse. I really liked how you presented everything. And going off on the whole skills, how would you recommend, like when it comes to resumes? I have no experience in marketing, no experience in tech or anything. Would you recommend like putting your skills, basing that off in your resume when it comes to looking for jobs in marketing research?
Yeah, I'm gonna give you like one of the best hacks that I've found for your resume, and this is not just for market research, it's for any job posting. So every job postings are pretty lengthy, right? They have a lot of words. Incorporate about 20 to 30% of the words you find in the job posting into your resume, right? And given that that's not really scalable, right? So you have to make sure that, you know, let's say there's like 5 roles that you really want. You have to customize your resume for each job description. So I don't know. I mean, I can't, I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head, but yeah, just literally incorporate the words used on the job posting into your resume. That'll help you for a couple, and don't copy paste it, otherwise that'll work against you. But, you know, weave it into your existing resume, because usually the first person that reviews the resume is not a person, it's an algorithm. And that algorithm is looking for the keywords from the job posting in your resume. So 20 to 30% is like kind of the magic number. And it will also help you. It's kind of like a brain exercise, right? Like, can you weave that in there? Is that transferable skills? If you can't, maybe the job's not for you. If you can, then that's a good sign.
That's a great tip. That's a great tip, Mario. Yeah, and Monse, I think to your question, it's about also the soft skills, right? Like there are, especially like smaller businesses, the soft skills matter a lot. Like people want to know who they're working with, what their values are, what they can do. I mean, there's a lot of people that can do the technical aspect of the work. So companies, I think more than ever also want to know the human side and the personal side of who you are and what non-technical or soft skills, as they're called, right? So I think that there's a lot of value in including that. And in fact, we put together a LinkedIn playbook that's on our Cura.us site now. But there's like, we put together like sample language on there of like a brief opening summary that includes how to come up with like your values, how to come up with like what you're looking for and what to do, so that you don't have to start from scratch. Copy and paste that, right? Play with it so that you can use that and have something to work off of. Sometimes, and even having a background in writing, sometimes the hardest part is like looking at a blank piece of paper.
Yeah.
Right. And so hopefully this template gives you a little bit, thanks for sharing that, Alex, a little bit to work off of as just like a jumping off point. Any other questions? My question for you, Mario, was, I want to be mindful of time. We have about 9 more minutes. You mentioned a lot about literature. There are any influential books that you've read or influences that you've had, any podcasts or it could be business related or non-business related that have really influenced and shaped you?
Yeah, someone asked me that recently and I drew a blank too. Because it's, well, you know, like how much we had to read, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting too, because I didn't know I was going to go into business, right? Like I didn't really know what I was going to do. Like I didn't really think about it to the dismay of my parents. It's not like, you know, I had a vision board and put like marketing executive on there. But I really felt that connecting with some books, some authors really guided my path, right? I was really into some of the English poets, the British poets, because they were just rebels, right? They rebelled against society. They rebelled against religion. And then I found out who the rebels were in America. And then I found out the rebels were a lot of the multicultural writers that were just underlooked at, right? That they were the ones like, you know, whoever has been kind of the underdog has always been someone that's something in some genre that's really resonated with me, is because those are the voices for change. And I feel like that's what led me onto my path. What did you see?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no. Oh, so that, yeah, thank you for teeing that up for me, because now I'm remembering. So I don't think there was any particular author or book. I think philosophy, I was really into philosophy. And if I'm real with myself, that's what I really wanted to major in, but I thought that I really can't get a job. So I chose.
No one was hiring for philosophers.
Right. But philosophy really helped me in that. And I think of like, I think of like the existentialists, which some people think about as negative, but what I took away from all of that is like, you can really shape your own world.
Mm.
And entrepreneurship and business was never really something in my path or thought, you know. But after reading that we are really kind of in charge of our destiny and you know, making meaning in our life, that opened up the world of entrepreneurship to me from that perspective, and helped me like weave my personal experiences and background and passions into a company that I'm really proud of.
Mm.
And like one thing I would say is like don't necessarily read business books if you want to get into business. I think the most interesting people that I've met and some of the most successful people I've met, like you, Jen, right? Like they read a lot of different things. Like you don't have to just read business books. I think the more non-business books you read, in fact, are going to make you a more well-rounded, thoughtful, curious person. That's so important now.
Let's talk a little bit about that. I think what it is like creativity, right? I think what
Creativity.
people underestimate is the ability to solve problems.
Right.
You're not just like narrowed focus on, well, maybe this successful business owner has the answer to it. it's like checking out of that lane and opening up and reading whatever, right? Like whatever interests you. All of a sudden there's a connection point to the problem you might have. Something else I think is really underestimated in business today, right? There's a school of thought of just like who can Wall Street Journal out the other Wall Street,
Yeah, no.
right? And like
Business has changed.
yeah, like it's hard for me to find the value in that. There's not a lot of diversity in that, right? Like I get it and it's valuable information and knowledge, but if everyone's reading the same source, then how can you think differently, whatever that source may be?
Yeah. Like I'm really into like sci-fi, and I'm really into like history. But I find like both of it, like reading about potential futures and reading about the past, it just gets your mind going. And like even if the solution isn't necessarily in the book, like reading those things just opens up your mind and helps you like tackle problems at work or life, right? Like as opposed to the business books that are very like conscriptive and like do this and that, it doesn't allow for creativity,
right,
you know?
Right. It's like step one, you know,
right.
step 2, step 3, and then if you don't do it, then you're mad at them.
Right.
Really kind of on yourself to find out, well, what's your style, what's your approach with that? I think that there's a lot of value in that. Are there any podcasts or like non-business influences that you have right now besides sci-fi and history?
Besides non-sci-fi and history,
Yeah, like any
all of the podcasts I listen to right now are like are like these history ones.
Which ones? I'm looking for some new.
Gosh, I'm totally it's something like radical history, but I'll send it. The guy's like a historian and just has a really cool storytelling voice. Yeah,
that's awesome. I love hearing it. I mean, I'm really into some of the crime podcasts. I love a lot of like the American Scandal, like the histories of like what's really happening, right?
Oh, yeah, that's another thing that I do like. I just heard a podcast on the whole. Yeah, there's some that's another thing I'm listening to.
Yeah, like
Jane Meyer. Jane Meyer is a really good investigative journalist that I like her writing.
This is a selfish question, but Lupe, Autumn, Jocelyn, Jasmine, give me some ideas right now. What are some podcasts or books that you all are reading right now?
Chicano Squad. Okay, cool.
I'm reading Cast, The Origins of Our Discontent by Isabel Wickerson. It's an awesome book.
I read that. That was mind-blowing.
Wow, I've not read that.
I can't get through. I'm trying to get through it, but I have to put it down sometimes because it can be emotionally heavy.
Wow.
But it's an easy read, but it's a hard read. So it's taking me some time to get through it. It was a part of my DEI book club for my job. And I'm just like, I'm not going to be able to make this meeting. I can't finish this in a month. It was a lot. It was a lot. I'm glad I purchased it though. It's been very insightful. I'm getting a lot of knowledge, the knowledge you don't get in your history textbooks. But it's definitely one to pull on the heartstrings. So tread lightly. But I definitely think it's a necessary read, if you ask me. But this is what I am.
Awesome. That was not on my list, and it is now. And you read that too, Mario?
I did.
Wow. Lupe, what's on your list or your nightstand?
I don't think I've been very consistent, but I recently bought a book called The 1 Week Budget, or the one, because I'm trying to get better at budgeting. But I'm just so tired from work, so it's hard to pick it up at night. Yeah. So
you know what I do, Lupe, is audiobooks. I'm a big audio. That's actually how I read Cast.
Well, and actually, here's a hack I just learned too, is you can just get them from the lot. You can get audiobooks.
That's what I do. That's what I do. Yeah.
I was spending so much money on the credits.
Same.
And I was like, wait a
Same.
minute. Wait
And
a
what's cool
minute.
about the library is that sometimes the book you want to read is not available. And it's a blessing in disguise, because then it just suggests another book and you're like, oh, okay, cool, I'll read that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so impressed. Our like the San Jose library, like you can rent Chromebooks.
Right.
They don't charge you a late fee. I'm like, how do you guys stay in business? You know, like the business side of me is like, you guys, and I'm like, it's not, they're not profit driven. It's okay. That's funny. Any other podcasts, Jasmine or Genesis or Jocelyn? I got to stay hip.
I do listen to a comedy one, Jen, on Sunday. I'm big in comedy too. It's not all heavy reading, but I'm a big stand-up fan. So
I mean, talk about like, I love stand-up too. I love comedy and I love stand-up and I love the recommendation. I just think like, what harder profession is there than just like immediate, right? Like the amount for a good stand-up comic, like the amount of work that goes into it. And it's interesting to learn there's like technology now that some of the comics are adding like technology so that they can rate the sound of the audience.
I did not know.
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? As if it wasn't
that's
enough.
Market research.
That's market research, as if it's not enough just to have like silence, you know? But yeah, so that and they're quantifying so that like, let's say 25% of the show should be like at a volume 8 to 9, right? 30% of the show is expected to be like at a 5 to a 6. And they want to minimize like anything underneath there of like lulls or like not, you know, small laughter, because it's like not successful enough for their metric. But I think that's really interesting too. I love it, man. I'm always selfishly always looking for book recommendations. My husband is just like, what's the matter with you? You know, any spare second I get, like I like run into a corner and just like, he's like, did you finish that? You remember Johnny Five from like Short Circuit, the robot that used to just like read books? Like that's me. I just go through them and we don't know where to, like, I'm just giving away tons of books because we don't know where to put them. And I like to read 3 books at the same time that are all different, right? Like I've been reading Ben Horowitz, like The Hard Thing About Hard Things, and that's awesome. I love that he opens each chapter with like a quote from a rapper, because he's like, being an entrepreneur is a lot like being a rapper. Like just the hustle mentality of what you have to do, and the fact that nobody has ever done exactly what you're doing. Like nobody's ever done it. That one's really inspiring. I like a lot of spiritual books. I like a lot of like Deepak Chopra, because it really like, I love the mentality of just like abundance, like thinking less about like money. Oh, this is relevant for you right now, Lupe, right? Less about like money, and more about just like abundance, right? Abundance of joy. Because like, what do you really want money to bring? Like, you want it to bring peace. You want it to bring good times. You want it to bring fun and love. So like, just like shifting your mentality a little bit from just one way of looking things to like abundance and opening up. I think meditation has been really helpful for me as an entrepreneur, right? Like, or I think it's like anything, is to really find that calm in like making some of those decisions, right? Not from a fear-based place, but really from like a growth mentality. Because I think you grow up thinking everything's so limited. And so you got to really force yourself to think big and branch out. And that's what we're hoping to do with Cura too, right? Is like, we're in Silicon Valley. Like, we might not be one call away from Tim Cook, right? But we're probably a few calls away from the couple people right under him. And like, why not expand that and expand our thinking to knowing that like these networks exist. And like you, a lot of my business has come from cold calls, you know, from pretending. I remember when we got Wells Fargo, I lied and pretended to be like in town for a wedding. I was like, oh, what a coincidence, I'm going to be in town, you know, and put together this pitch deck for him. And we're still friends, but like, you know, years later, he's like, man, that pitch deck was terrible. Like, it was really bad, but I really liked what you said. I really liked your idea. And like, they gave us a chance, right? Like, and that's how my business got started. And it's like, take those chances. Like, I would have been awesome if we had LinkedIn 15 years ago. And like, now we do. It's like, how can we pass the ball around so that we can open some of those doors for each other? Awesome, guys. Well, 7:05. Any closing questions or remarks? Mario, any wisdom, wise words to say?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's all.
I think someone else was talking though. No?
I was just curious, and this is kind of selfish. I saw you were connected with Ish Verduzco on Twitter and LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I was just curious. I was gonna send you a message after, but I figured I'd ask you right now.
Sure. What you're asking me
Ish,
if I'm connected with him?
no, how you know Ish Verduzco? Just I only bring him up because I followed him since he's like a Latino influencer,
Oh
and
yeah.
he's obviously very he manages his time very well. And I first got with him, got or like followed him was because of his his workout thing, like
Yeah.
trying to get 300 workouts for the year. So
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, this is good. What's the word? Good to keep
Inspiration.
track. Yeah, inspiration, but also he had like a little group chat
Accountability.
accountability. There you go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
ever since then, he was talking about NFTs and all that stuff. So I'm like, oh, this guy's pretty humble, but obviously very motivational. So that's why I was just curious.
Oh
How
yeah.
you?
No, so Ish is awesome. He's colleague that's turned into a friend. His fiance is in the mental health space. We share a lot of kind of similar interests. He got me, I got into cryptocurrency in like 2017. And he got me into like NFTs and that whole Web3 thing.
Yeah.
I think we connected probably during the pandemic when everybody was like trying to get some contact, reach out to other people.
Yeah.
So kind of networked then. So I've known him for a couple years. And then since then we've gone to a few events together, have met up. So yeah, he's great. I mean, that's another follow for sure. That I recommend for people. Just a really, really great to have a Latino thought leader, right? Because so many thought leaders, tend to be white males, and he comes from, a different space, and he's trying to be like the, Latino Tim Ferriss, which I think is awesome.
That's awesome, Mario. I didn't know you knew him.
Yeah,
That's super cool.
yeah, he's in Los Angeles.
Yeah. hmm I wanted to go to his event, but I wasn't. I'm not in LA. But anywho, I was just curious. Appreciate you answering that.
Yeah.
Anything else? Closing remarks, Mario?
Closing remarks, I would say, please reach out to me if you're interested in the market research industry. I know it, like when the word market research, it just doesn't have good marketing, which is ironic, right? But it's it's super interesting. There's all kinds of roles. I think you can find your passion there. And then also like I think this is important. Like it pays well. It's an industry that does pay well. There's a lot of money going into this space because data is becoming so important to companies. So I would highly recommend you check it out.
Can we talk about that real quick? Mario, what does it pay? Like, what's the starting salary? What does like an average, market research employee make a couple of years into the game?
Yeah, so I think the entry point is like project management for most people. I think you can expect, out of college, or maybe not even, and call it, depending where you're at, like 50 to 60,000 entry level. I think with 2 to 3 years experience, definitely in the 70, 80 range. 3 to 5, it's 80 plus.
Mm.
If you get into sales, of course, that's now you're talking 6 figures. But yeah, it's super competitive.
That's great. That's
Yeah,
great.
I think if you look at like the Bureau of Labor Statistics, like the average national salary for market research is like 56,000.
Mhm.
With, you know, which if you look at other industries, that's pretty good.
Mhm. That's, and just curious, is it mostly college degree required? Are there any jobs for non?
Not like project management, I don't think so.
Because there's
If
a lot of, like, to your point, like the Google certificates around like project
Mhm.
management or product lead, which I love the program that they're doing.
The only roles that will require some sort of degree are like when you're actually like writing the surveys
Mhm.
or, you know, things like that. But there's ironically like those that's very little. Like the people, like most of it is like the selling of it, the mapping of it. The people that are actually writing the research, those you'll need a degree, but yeah, for the most part, no.
Awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough. I mean, I always enjoy speaking with you. I really appreciate your sincerity and your authenticity and everything that you do. I really appreciate and admire how you always bring your full self to whatever it is that you're doing. So thank you for taking the time to meet with us and for your willingness to open some doors and make some connections and introductions. Thank you, all of you. Autumn, we're so excited to have someone from the East Coast join our calls. Tell your friends. And the rest of you, Lupe and Jocelyn, Jasmine, Monse, Genesis, Hector, you always, I really appreciate that you guys take the time and have the curiosity and ambition to show up for these calls. You know, good networks don't just build themselves. So we're hoping to be able to provide the access, but we can't do all the work for you. That's when your ambition kicks in. So thank you all for your time, and we'll see you. Our next speaker is going to be somebody from Meta, from the business communication side of Meta. May 11th. So we'll have a sign up to Cura.us for the newsletter and the events. And you're all welcome to join and hear her talk about hiring for Meta right now, non-tech jobs and tech jobs.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Take it easy. Nos vemos.
Adiós, Raúl. Nos vemos en la fiesta. Voy para San José.
Sí. Adiós.
Cuídate, adiós.